I wanted to do a quick video on working in group isolation mode. So, this is really more of a workflow or a strategy based video. You're not going to hear any audio examples, but if you understand this concept, it may really make your life a lot easier as a music producer or a mix engineer. But certainly, this does depend on the type of music that you make. And a lot of times, specifically, if you need to do automation to a lot of different parts, or in some cases to the entire composition all at once. And so I'm going to talk about how you can set that up and why this is a very efficient way of working and how it could be beneficial to you and your style of music. So the one thing that we have to take advantage of is how Bitwig Studio goes about grouping. And if you remember at the very beginning, grouping wasn't even available in the program. And now, interestingly, with the way that I think they implement it, it's very useful, and it's useful in more ways than you might think. Really, the way Bitwig Studio approaches grouping is what I would call a file cabinet approach, right? We have our file cabinet, we can open that file cabinet up, and then we could split things out. So we can imagine that in that file cabinet, we have one big folder and then a couple of other smaller subfolders. And within there, you're putting in more documents or whatever, and you can make it as many layers deep as you want. That's exactly the way Bitwig Studio approaches grouping. And what's so amazing about that is that you can then specifically go in and even take an entire main part of a track or the whole track entirely, as we've done here, and put it in a group and then apply processing at that level. So for example, we may not want to put something on the master, or we might just want to use and have our limiter on the master, but at the same time, we need to do some kind of volume automation. Always dangerous to do volume automation with the fader, but we could go in here and we could use, say, the tool device, or we could even just use a filter. And so on our entire track now, we would be filtering everything out. We could bring the cutoff down, we could automate that, etc., without having to worry about doing it on each individual section. And that was the way I used to go about doing things in the past. Very inefficient, but with Bitwig and the ability to group by just hitting, Command G with your couple of audio tracks, you could then very quickly take all of this guy, bring it together, and now this becomes the top level, right? So very simple and easy to do, and I think that's where this program can really actually shine if you need to do a lot of, grouping within grouping and so forth. So what we see here and what we're going to look at next is how to actually make this even more visually appealing to you. You can't resize the tracks, and that's always kind of annoying. And we'll get over and look at an actual project in a second and why this is so useful. But here, if I want to just isolate out what's going on in the drums group, I can visually do that. I could either do that by going up here, clicking and choosing drums, and you can see our group hierarchy here, or I can even just go to the drums themselves and I can right click that and I can choose enter group. And now I'm just in working with the drums. And the same thing is true if I go to the mix view here. And then I could open this up and I can see, okay, here are my main drums. Here's my percussion. I'm going to set my balance and pan. And if I need to do any kind of group level processing, like bus level processing, I can still do that. Now, it's a little bit different though, right? And why is it different? It's different because this is no longer our master output. This is just the group output here. So if I want to apply compression to all of my drums, I would actually do it at this drums master level. But if I needed to apply some different sort of processor to my percussion, say a delay, I could do that here at this group level. And then if I want to go a step further, I could enter into just the percussion group. And then again, I'd have to put the delay or something down here. And I'll just back up so you can see this. Over time, and I'm going to stress this again, it's taken me a few months to really start getting into this habit, into doing this. But now I really love it. So it's kind of second nature to me. But for some of you, you might be thinking, whoa, what the hell is going on right now? Don't worry, it will make sense in a second when we look at the actual example. So I put my delay onto my percussion. We know that that's being applied to all of these different percussion hits. But if I go in and I open up then just the percussion group to give myself even more screen real estate, just know what I'm working with, I can see what I have, I love it, you'll see that again, it is now happening here at the percussion master level. And now if I want to go back and I want to apply, say, compression to all of my drums, and we'll open up the drums group, I would go into the drums master here, and then this is where I'd come and I would bring on my compressor. All right. And then we can always exit all the way back out to the full project and we can kind of see what we've done, knowing that now this is actually the top level. This is the full song. And I have my filter going on there. On the drums, I have a compressor, and that's compressing everything in the main drums, like snare, kick, whatever, as well as in the percussion. And then I still have other parts on their own. If I need to go in and work with those and set the balances, I can do that by closing everything else up. And then I know, okay, here's my vocal in isolation. I'll set that accordingly. Here's, the synth part in isolation. I'll set that up accordingly. And this is all a little bit confusing theoretically, but we can look at a practical example that I've done fairly recently, and you can actually see the way that I've structured it. There is a full track inside of this right now, okay? And there's some contact library that's loading, but there's a full track inside of here, and yet all we see is just this, right? This one group. I don't have any processing to the full group here, but usually I would. If there needs to be like a fade in or a fade out or something with a filter happening to the whole track, I can do that. But when we open it up, we then see I have an A section, I have a B section, and then I have a couple of things that are really only happening in the outro. I could put those into a group, but since it's not a lot, I don't have to worry about it. Well, if we look at this, I can see in the A section, I have some things. I have an effects layer going on here, and I also have a tool device going on here. Okay, at one point I was probably going to be automating the volume of this, and I decided not to, or I've even just turned it up a little bit for the entire section. All right, that's useful at times. If you don't want to have to reset balances, you can turn everything up, leave that fader alone. And that's what I love to do. And we can look in here and see with the automation that I have a lot of things changing. I have certain things going on and happening here inside of the A section. And well, what comprises the A section? All of this, including drums, vocals, instruments, additional risers and effects. We can see how I've taken a compressor to the main drums. On the vocals, I have one reverb. The instruments, I have nothing. On the risers effects, I have nothing. But inside, then I have all of my different parts going on, etc., etc., etc. But as I start to look at this, this is very daunting. There's a lot of crap going on in here. Let's say I want to reset the balances. I can just jump into the group, and even though there's still a lot going on, it's a lot less than if I just had everything open all at once. Okay, and that's kind of the thing that I'm trying to stress to you guys here. And in reality, if this was more of a professional thing and not just something I was doing for fun, on the master here, I probably have some kind of instance of Nebula, run it through some kind of preamp or something, try to color all of my instruments the same way, whatever, like Waves NLS. But that's basically the idea, and that's what I wanted to show you. And you can see just how useful this is, and I'll probably link the track that I used. And what I really want you to listen to is what happens in the transition phase. And you'll notice how everything is changing there. It's all being processed the same way, and it's done very efficiently. It's done all from that A section, right? All of the processing is occurring there at the A section. On the B section, again, I have a filter going there, etc. So this is something that you need to spend some time with. You have to experiment with on your own, and you might find that it works out and is very useful to you, and it may not be. And just as a reminder, same thing is true if you go into the mixing view here. If I just want to see, for example, what's happening with the main drums, I can always go in here. I can enter that group, and I can then, do whatever I need to do with each of these tracks individually. Again, reminding you that the group level processing, the bus processing, is now happening in what they call like the group master channel. So just some food for thought, something you might want to experiment with. And this seems like, wow, like this is such a waste of my time. He's just ranting about what levels and layers of grouping, but it's actually super beneficial. And especially when you're making like electronic music, or even if you're doing pop music and you have 100 tracks, I mean, there's a lot of tracks in this particular song. Having the ability to isolate out those groups, work within those groups, process at the levels, do extreme processing on the whole track if you need to, is something that you can accomplish relatively simply without ever having to worry too much about faders at this level or doing any processing on the master, etc., etc., etc. So thanks for your attention. I hope you're able to use this. I think it's a very useful thing. and can really make your life a lot simpler and make your music making process more fun and more efficient. So thanks for your attention. Have a good one.